Today we're going to talk about we talk about graft calculation for hair restoration, and oftentimes what we find is someone trying to sell you how much does it cost per graft, and especially when I deal with a lot of men, they're very, very focused on numbers. How many numbers are you going to give me? How much are you going to charge me per graft? And when I tell them we don't charge per graft, they start thinking I'm being evasive. But what I want to express to you is why and how. First of all, if you think about the number of grafts that are being distributed, we will give you a range of grafts and range of hairs. The reason for it, here's a good example. Just yesterday, we had a gentleman that paid for a stage 3 procedure, and he got 5,000 hairs, which is stage 4. We didn't charge him more. We should have charged him a couple $1,000s more. Now, why didn't we? Well, it was just a lot of density. What people pay for are results. They don't pay for numbers. And of course, you have to have enough numbers to get the results. Now, let's talk about numbers. Does a 6-hair graft, a 4-hair graft, a 2-hair graft, and a 1-hair graft all count the same? Well, I don't know. Do they? Well, here's an example. Yesterday, what I was trying to do is create a very strong hairline for him. I needed a lot of follicular unit grafts of 2 hairs. So I had them cut grafts up to about 700 to get those results. Now, if he was more interested in central density, which I still provided with stronger difollicular unit grafts that had about 6 to 7 hairs going through the central scalp, then he would have had fewer grafts, but his result would have been poorer in the sense of his hairline couldn't tolerate those grafts. Now, if his hairline had a very lighter hair, he could use fewer 1-hair grafts. But 1-hair grafts don't have the visual punch of 2-hair grafts. So what are you paying for? Are you paying for 4-hair grafts, 6-hair grafts, 2-hair grafts, 1-hair grafts? Do I have to split grafts in order to create the numbers that you want, even though your visual density is less? Because if I keep a 3-hair graft intact, it's a lot more powerful than 1-hair graft. Do you even know what you're paying for? And so what I really want you to encourage you is not the grafts, you're paying for results. And what I want to do is get you a result. And so that brings me to the second point, which is not the grafts, but the results. Now, how do you attain results? Now, we've gone through a huge number of other videos that focus on the quality of the graft dissection, the quality of the graft placement, the quality of recipient site creation, the distribution, etc. But what I want to explore is just one facet, because there's just too much information to explore in one single video. And there's a lot of other videos that you can look at to understand this concept better. But let's focus on one, which is what I'm thinking about when I'm making a distribution. And I just want to use perhaps a couple of the clinical case scenarios of the last week or so to illustrate this point. The gentleman yesterday needed a strong hairline, so I gave him a very, very strong hairline. That was my priority 1. My priority 2 was to create density in the central forelock, which was right behind the hairline. The other thing that I saw was as it went back, he just had a central gutter of emptiness, and he was old enough, and my understanding is that he wouldn't really recede too much across the side, so I provided a lot of central density, and then he had sort of this open circle right above the vertex plane. So I distributed those grafts well, because remember how many grafts you get, if they're not distributed well, you really get nothing out of it. So I maximize that distribution based on what I was seeing. A gentleman that we did last week, a very nice gentleman that came in from another state, had a transplant, which was very ineffective for him. Had like few grafts, are all badly angled, showed no density. So visually what I was thinking for him, looking at him with dry hair, was that I was going to create a very strong frame that he needed, a hairline frame that he did not have with his first surgeon. It was a very reputable individual. The area behind the area, which was central density. And then I thought, his back mid-scalp region looked pretty good. And on the upper crescent portion right here, he looked a little bit open. And that was already grafted. So I thought, I'm going to go and do the front and the back and leave the middle alone. Well, as I did the front procedure, as I rinsed his hair down and started to get it wet, his whole back scalp just looked completely naked. So here was my thinking, okay? I was thinking, well, first I'm going to get his front end done. He needs this done. It wasn't done by the other surgeon. I need to get this done. So I got that done. So instead of taking grafts and putting it to the vertex, upper crescent vertex, back here, I said, I need to blend this into the back portion for several reasons. One, his hair will look great dry. It won't look good wet. It will be too an abrupt transition from the front to the mid-scalp. The second thing is what haunted me was when he was lying down and he started to say, before I started the procedure, he says, this looks good dry, but it doesn't look good wet. And so that haunted me for that first 3 hours as I was doing it, thinking, okay, I really need to get this part done. So in collaboration with the patient, he realized that we can't get to the vertex. We need to prioritize that back scalp. That wasn't a priority 3 hours before, but as I saw what he told me, what he told me is what I saw, I need to get that backside done. So this is the creative element of good hair restoration. And I've only touched the top of the iceberg in terms of the creativity. I could spend 16 hours telling you how every single transplant I've done has been distributed well based on the patient's age, gender, ethnicity, type of hair loss, plan for future hair loss, way that the hair is styled, all these factors, density, caliber of hair, all these things go into this, my left brain process through and comes out my right brain where I think, okay, this is how I'm going to maximize the distribution. And that's what Amin and I, when we were running a course in St. Louis a month ago, I started to do this hairline workshop showing how to just draw a hairline. And that morphed into a much more complicated idea. Well, let's not just draw a hairline. I just want you to draw a line. That's very important that you draw it naturally, and that's what we did on Friday. On Saturday, as I was doing the advanced workshop, I started to say, look, it's not just drawing the hairline, it's does this hairline fit the patient? Does it fit the patient's age? Will it plan for further recession? Do we think about that hairline in relationship to the density back here and how we can talk to the patient about what the goals are to achieve? Does it talk about the amount of hair loss the person has? Is it achievable? Will this result look natural in 5 to 6 to 10 years? And all those things must be processed. So when you're asking a doctor, which is such an easy thing to do, how much is it per graft? Think about everything I just told you, because you're missing 98% of the equation. And I had a gentleman about 2 weeks ago that, maybe 3 weeks ago, that came in for consult, and when I finished and left the room, they asked him again. I don't understand it. He doesn't tell me the number of grafts, and we have the graft printed there in front of him, but we don't have it per graft. Is it wrong for people to charge per graft? No, it's not wrong. Absolutely not wrong. But my point is, if you don't get this video, you're not going to be my patient. And it's not a big deal because you pick patients the way you pick surgeons the way I pick patients. If my patients get it, fantastic. If you don't, there are people down the street that'll just charge you per graft and stick some hair in your head. And that's fine with me. And my point is, in this video, is to talk to you about the complexity that you're paying me for. It's not just sticking some stuff up in your head. If that's what you're paying for, then you really shouldn't be my patient because you're not going to appreciate the quality we're delivering. And that's really what I want to get to in terms of the level of complexity, the level of commitment, and the level of passion that all my team and I deliver. Thank you.